welcome to episode 27 of the newly named here, or renamed rather, Wisconsin Sports Spotlight. Myself, Drew Skyberg here, joined alongside Johnny Tim, a broadcaster for the Muskegon Clippers, and then we also have right for the Press Times. You're doing some work in photography, and then also doing some articles and stuff, and then lastly, right, the Packers. I didn't even include St. Norbert. There's four things they're doing. Swiss Army knife and broadcasting. Johnny Tim, how you doing tonight?
Great, Drew. How are you?
It's great to have you on. I'm doing well too. Had you on for the college athlete spotlight, so talking a little bit more about what this series is about. It's about highlighting individuals who have contributed to Wisconsin sports. So for example, here Johnny doing a lot of work, whether it's in high school or collegiate level sports, and even with the Packers too. We'll talk a little bit about that, but just highlighting kind of great things, right, with a great sports state. I have the Bucks flag and the Brewer flag in the back, similar to the college athlete spotlight. Johnny was on that part, but here now talking more on just overall sports level here for Wisconsin. And really glad to have you on, Johnny, to kick us off here. But I did want to hear your thoughts about how the Packer game went Thursday at Lambeau.
Well, if you ask me, the Packers won the third quarter, but other than that, it was not anything like we've seen the past couple of weeks. I mean, obviously you got the win week one against Chicago, but I feel like all in all, the offense, defense needs to play better. I mean, we knew Detroit going into the year was going to be difficult, but we also knew that the Jordan Love era maybe wouldn't be as smooth as we thought it was. I mean, we were kind of spoiled as Packer fans the first few weeks, seeing Jordan Love play exceptionally good quarterback in football. So at the end of the day, being 2-2 the first 4 weeks, it's about as good as the Packers could have hoped for.
Yeah, I think the most humiliating thing, though, right? I mean, you mentioned like the expectations, like you lose this game, but you lose this game to all the Detroit Lion fans in attendance. That is something that was like, okay, this doesn't happen, and the fact that happened was rough. I also need to hear thoughts on Brewers Diamondbacks 3-game series Tuesday through Thursday at American Family Field. What's the prediction?
Well, first and foremost, I'm kind of happy that the Brewers took care of business and knocking the rest of the NL Central out of playoff contention. As for the Brewers, I feel like their pitching is, for the most part, going to be fantastic. It's now a matter of will they be able to string in those consistent bats like we've seen in the month of September. It's a very rookie-dominated squad, along with, the regular guys like Yelich, Adames, and Contreras. So I feel like if guys like Tyrone Taylor and Sal Frelick can step up big, Monasterio in there as well. Canna and Santana have been great additions as of late post All-Star break. So I feel like it's all a matter of it coming together. Brian Anderson, the Brewers play-by-play broadcaster, predicts the Brewers as a very sleeper-heavy team in regards to maybe going all the way. So at the end of the day, they just got to take care of business against the Diamondback squad, who's very much a sleeper team. They snuck into that last spot along with Miami. So, Brewers just have to take advantage of playing at home and get back to playing competitive baseball.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I'm hoping for Brewers in 2. It's a 3-game series again. It's gonna be tough. Arizona gave Brewers some fits in the regular season, but that's what I'm looking at. And just recorded before an episode of Drew Sports, we're talking through all this stuff, and then also the Damian Lillard trade, of course. Lastly, highlighting that. Really exciting times here in Milwaukee sports. But Johnny, I wanted to hear kick us off here again. Right, football's going on right now. Chiefs up 17-0 over the Jets. But to kick us off here on this episode, just overall wanting to hear your thoughts, or really how you became interested in becoming a sports announcer, and then also just working in sports / broadcasting and journalism.
Man, so when I first started thinking about getting into the sports media industry, I'm going to be blatantly honest, it was in 4th grade. Now, we had to do a required school play at Holy Family Catholic School, and I signed up to be the sports broadcaster in the skits, The Cheetah and the Sloth, mainly because I was interested in being something that I'd enjoy. So yes, I was the sports broadcaster in The Cheetah and the Sloth, and I didn't know that part was like the main character. You have to memorize 30, 40 lines and be enthusiastic about it, but I was all in for it, and I ended up really liking that role. And parents said I sounded a natural, my parents included. So realistically, ever since fourth grade, and now Drew, I've been big into sports my whole life. Just putting that with what I want to do with my life, it hasn't been a question ever since that fourth grade skit of what I want to do in the sports media industry. Obviously, sports broadcasting would be my dream job, but I mean, as you mentioned, I'm writing articles for the Press Times now. I've served as a media transcriber for the Packers. It really, I want to take my sports knowledge and maybe potential capabilities anywhere, not necessarily broadcasting specifically, but that would definitely be preferred in my pursuit of ultimately working in the professional media field full time.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's crazy how the stories always are. Fourth grade, there you go. But is there a sport that like you felt even in fourth grade honed in like I want to do football, baseball, basketball, or was there ever like a thought of what sport specifically?
I feel like baseball would have been the first sport to predominantly cross my mind. Grew up listening to Mr. Baseball, Bob Uecker, Brian Anderson, who's now one of the top broadcasters in the sports in general. He was just simply with the Brewers and working his way up from there. So
Crazy,
right then
yeah.
and there, those are two very powerful influences to me and who I kind of take after. Brian Anderson is a very similar story, just going to a small college and working his way up from there. So baseball, there was nothing like watching baseball as a second or third grader on a summer night. Of course, my parents made me go to bed before the game would be over, but it was baseball, I think, was the sport that really introduced me to, hey, it's kind of like just talking in the microphone for 3 hours and you got to fill the gaps in between pitches. And that's, I'd say baseball, to answer your
Stories, yeah.
question, baseball was the biggest sport to motivate me to want to do this.
Yeah, that's great. Well, BA's story is crazy. Think about like he was doing games in Texas, like right in the 90s or whatever. You mentioned small town, and now look, he's doing TNT. He's doing playoff games in baseball. He's doing it all. I mean, baseball, basketball, mostly. It's just crazy. And then, of course, Bob Uecker, right, took the player route. But just overall, right, a lot of different ways, and everybody has a unique story. And yeah, definitely baseball, and we'll talk about your summer. Although not Wisconsin, I talked to you about. We got to talk about what you did in Muskegon, just right across the mighty Lake Michigan. And let's actually go right to that. So yeah, this summer, right, you were the announcer for the Muskegon Clippers, and overall, it seemed like a great experience. You had a lot of great posts, a lot of good content coming from that, and it looks like while you had good content, the team had a good performance. I guess. How did that all go?
Well, first off, deciding which team to go for, because I had reached out to a lot of teams, but ultimately, a lot of the only teams that offered were out of states. And I kind of figured, and my mother also told me this, a lot of teams don't want the boy next door. They want to, like, essentially make themselves look good. So the thought never occurred to me of staying in Wisconsin, I guess, for that. But the Clippers, they're a very promising organization. They're run by two brothers, Pete and Walt Gawkowski. Shout out to them. Pete is essentially the owner, and Walt, he coached baseball his whole life. He played at Central Michigan, and they founded this team to be a part of the Great Lakes Summer Collegiate League. Now, that's a league similar to what the Green Bay Rockers or the Fond du Lac Dock Spiders do, and their main role is to give like D1, D2 primarily, sprinkle a few D3 players in there, but their main objective is to get the guys summer reps, wood and bat experience, and exposure to professional scouts. This league is funded by Major League Baseball. And ultimately going into Muskegon, I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I've never been to Lower Michigan. Well, I have been, just never like living there for a long period of time. I mean, going to school is one thing, but this was essentially a 2-month broadcasting camp for me. So, I mean, I had a lot to learn right away. I didn't know anyone off the top of my head because I'm from out of town, but I really got the experience of what it's like to travel with a team, get to know the players, create content night in and night out, whether it's stuff to talk about on air, feature stories, pregame interviews and questionnaires, reaching out to other teams and see what's going on with them. And not only did I get that hands-on experience, but the Muskegon Clippers ended up having the statistically best record in league history, 33 wins and 5 losses. And it was
Wow.
all in all, I couldn't have asked for a better organization to really get my feet wet in the like full-time broadcasting world. And although they got knocked out of the playoffs in round 1 by the Lima Locos, they'll be back next year, but it was a great experience. I'll never forget it. And right now my intentions are to return to Muskegon for another summer with the Clippers.
Amazing.
I mean, I'm getting all the experience I need. I'm comfortable with the organization. It's a blooming brand of baseball, and I mean, quite frankly, I can't complain of my experience at all. There was no downsides to it. I guess being away from home was a little bit of a rude awakening, especially on the 4th of July when you're seeing all my college buddies having fun, the fireworks, and here I am on a bus to Lima, Ohio. But at the end of the day, you got to make sacrifices in this world, and I mean, giving up my summer to do what I love was a no-brainer. I would never trade the summer of 2023 for anything, and I'm hoping this 2024 Clipper squad is more of the same.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's crazy for me. Johnny Tim 1 year there, and the year he comes, all time, greatest season. I saw that and I was like, wow, look at this. Better come back next year. You're going to be hoisting the trophy. So just it sounded great. And as you've just talked about, it was great experience, and glad you had that, Johnny, throughout this past summer. And how did you feel? Because I always wonder, the preparation part for me is the most interesting. Because right, we get to hear the broadcasters, we get to hear Bob Uecker, we get to hear Jeff Levering, all the guys, Lane Grindle. I'm just doing Brewers radio more specifically, but because we're talking baseball here. But you hear these guys just talk on the radio and stuff, but you never get to see the prep that goes in and out. Was there something that throughout that preparation, is there something you really enjoyed, and maybe some things you did enjoy through that?
So oftentimes, Drew, people ask me that question, and I walk it through like this. It's what you want to do is it's like preparing a 3-page paper on a 3-hour presentation. You need to have the notes and stuff to talk about. I wouldn't say a script, although sometimes I will have scripts for special pregame rituals or
Oh yeah.
feature stories. But baseball is one of those sports where you need to be talking about something. So honestly, the preparation is something that I had to kind of work around and get used to. I mean, I'm used to doing it for St. Norbert Athletics, so going into the summer, I wasn't worried about it. But I mean, the truth is, I didn't know what it was like to do it every single day, and especially those road games where maybe we have to get on the bus early in the morning and I have to do all the work on the bus or stay up late, or even at a hotel room when we would stay overnight for road game series. But the preparation is everything, and if you can tell, I can tell personally, broadcasts where I've prepared enough, have a lot to talk about in a game that's as calm as baseball. Not that it isn't exciting, but there's a lot of time in between pitches, no matter what a pitch clock will do. And I feel like the more you prepare, the more smooth it's going to go, the smarter you're going to sound, and the more fun you're going to have on live air.
I totally get that. Shout out Jordan Lawrence. I did some on the radio. I've done games with him on WOMT, but doing it from a color commentary perspective is a lot, and I know you were going mostly solo in the booth, correct?
That's correct. Other than the All-Star game, which I was privileged to be a part of, I was by myself all year. I'd have a couple times where I'd have a guest on the other mic to talk a feature story, such as the team general manager. But other than that, it was just me, myself, and I.
Yeah, so like that, going through preparations, just completely different, I feel. If you have 2 people, right, the amount of stories that could maybe come up, just having a general outline and whatnot. But certainly, wow, going through one person for a whole summer for baseball is just wild. So kudos to you. Because, wow, a lot of different stories that you've got to find. And overall, though, those interviews with like a general manager, or maybe were you able to have those owners of the Clippers on too?
The owner, not so much. Pete Gawkowski, who is also my host family, I didn't know how much it really takes to even run a small franchise such as the Clippers, because, I mean, when you put ticket sales, concessions, merchandise, and all the factors that go into even the smallest of brands of baseball, it takes a toll. And Pete worked very hard. The whole Gokowski family kind of runs the show, and so I never got the owner on, but for preseason interviews, I was able to get a lot of the staff on. Next week Sunday, I'll be having on a former Clipper who's now playing for one of the affiliates of the Cincinnati Reds, who was named Prospect of the Year for the Cincinnati Reds organization. So I've met a lot of cool people within this Clipper organization, and who I've gotten to share experiences with and get to know a lot more.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? How you mentioned it's funded through Major League Baseball. I didn't realize that that league specifically was right. The Great Lakes Collegiate. There's that league is for summer baseball, right? You, as you mentioned, were you right? I'm gonna guess there will be scouts in attendance then too, right? At some games.
That was correct. I'd say more so the Ohio cities. Muskegon, they're described as the red hair and freckles child of the league because they're so far away from the Detroit areas, the Ohio areas. There's only 4 teams in the league from Michigan. So scouts, per se, not a lot of the Muskegon home games, but the All-Star game was just decorated with people from the Athletics, the Dodgers, the Rangers. Like it pick your poison. They had a whole row of scouts at Prasco Park in Cincinnati, which is a major league level ballpark. So I'd say the All-Star game and their festivities had the most big league exposure per se, but I mean, they're all using a wood bats. They're all throwing 90 plus miles an hour. So they're all scholarship baseball players putting out quality talent, and the big league took note, and that's why they fund the league to go on year in and year out.
It's amazing. And it's great that you were able to be a part of that All-Star game. That sounds like a great moment. Do you have a moment, throughout your broadcasting career, like a best call? Is there one that sticks out?
Man, I really would have to think about this.
I think you had a St. Norbert one. You have a St. Norbert basketball one that I think I've seen before on Twitter, or X now, rather.
My one St. Norbert basketball one, it was at St. Norbert College. It was the holiday tournament, but St. Norbert wasn't playing. It was the championship round. It was the University of Northwestern, St. Paul versus St. Olaf, 2 very good D3 programs in Minnesota. But it was a back and forth game. I don't think the largest lead was more than 5 all game long. But St. Olaf was kind of trailing at the end, and both teams were calling timeouts and strategically planning, making great plays, and Kobe Kirk had the game-winning bucket for St. Olaf. It was just a very exciting game. I wouldn't say there's any solo moment that sticks out, but that game in particular, shout out to my partner Austin Miller, who was on the call for me with that one. That was probably my greatest game to announce as a broadcaster. Even though St. Norbert wasn't playing, it was an incredible basketball game. And although a lot of fans left because obviously St. Norbert got knocked out, it was an incredible game of basketball. I would love to relive that one if I could.
Yeah, so that was my guess for one, and I wasn't trying to put you on the spot either. I think just that game overall stood out because I remember seeing that one, and it was like, wow, that was a crazy moment, and rightfully deserved. Yeah, you and Austin nailed it on the call, so that was a cool one. I had in mind, and that probably is one of the most. That goes probably with my other question of what was the most thrilling game you've been a part of? I'm gonna guess we'll go right there. Call that one that, or was there another?
I'd say for basketball, I'd say that one. Another notable one is when St. Norbert women's team made the Northern Athletics Collegiate Conference Championship game. It was their first year as members. They had a really good team put together that year, and it came down to the final shots. And then baseball, I'd say there's a ton of Clippers games that could be up there. A couple of walk-off wins when they kept breaking a record, franchise win record, pitcher winning record, the league overall record. The summer was providing so many quality games for me to broadcast, and a lot of which I have used as samples to collect for a demo reel down the road when hopefully I'm applying for bigger teams and need examples of what I can do.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you've had the opportunity to have those great calls, right? You've been blessed with a lot of those. And what would you say, going from football to baseball to basketball? Like we talked about baseball with all the downtime and stuff, but how easy is it to seamlessly go from one sport to the other for commentating?
Now, I've gone right from Schneider Stadium into Pier to the Mobile Family Fitness and Sports Center from football to call a basketball game. And let me tell you, there's a dramatic difference. Basketball is one of those games where it's probably the easiest to call solo. I mean, there's always action going on. Football, man, it's such a fast-paced moving game, but even though there's a lot of time in between plays, there's so much going on, like with the blocking, receivers, motion, who's making the tackle, who set a block downfield. I'd say basketball or football is one of those sports where you definitely need an analyst for. Now, I haven't always had the privilege of having one for a game, but it's something I would definitely want to work on. But adjusting, I'd say if you know the game and know the rules inside and out, it's very, very important. There was one game I think I had to explain to my partner what a restricted area was in basketball at the college level, the little half circle by the hoop. But other than that, if you have a knowledge for the game, it shouldn't be that difficult, I guess. But it definitely takes getting used to, no matter what sport you're doing. And football is definitely one of those sports where I need a lot more work on my play-by-play for.
Yeah, just with how it moves, game to game. If you ever need a color guy for and I'm in the area, let me know. I always love to do color. I gladly will stop in.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah, but I want to ask too about, you did a lot of those interviews too with players, like post-game interviews and stuff. Overall, how do you find doing those? Because like those almost feel like great, because haven't you done some with the Clippers? Like if a walk-off win, a guy hits a walk-off, you interview them? Like,
yeah.
How are those on the fly ones?
I would decide a player of the game for essentially every game. Now, typically it'd be the player who had the most hits or the most RBIs, or if the winning pitcher had a pretty good game. But towards the end of the year, I'd kind of rotate and give other guys an opportunity, simply because I want to give them some clout and exposure. Maybe it was a guy who appeared one inning late in the game and had a big hold and only pitched for an inning, but I don't know. It kind of rotates, but if it was obvious for a player of the game, yes. Walk-offs, it's a no-brainer who you want to talk to at the end as well. So I'd say questions were obviously made up on the fly, but I mean, typically it's how are you going to take this energy going forward, thoughts on the victory, and if there was a special moment in the game where I want to ask them about, I'll reach out about that.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay, we're good now. Yeah. A few more things I got, because I wanted to ask a little bit about some like advanced stats that's growing, especially in baseball. So I was gonna throw a little at you. I don't know how well they track that, like how well they get the data for, like, of course you get like the batting average, you'll get the on base, it's slugging, I imagine you get OPS, but overall, like, how was that implementing that, like when you're talking or doing your broadcast, and were you able to really implement that throughout your outline and stuff?
100%. We have very talented stat keepers within the Clippers organization. All the stats are kept on point streaks, which is updated through the league night in and night out. Every player's college typically holds pretty good stats, especially at the D1 level. They got to stay sharp with it. Advanced stats, I don't look a whole lot into. On base percentage, I feel like is a definitely slept on characteristic in the game of baseball. I mean, ultimately your goal is to get to first base when you step in the box, whether you hit the ball or not. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't look too far into such as whip or Ks per 9 innings, especially if you talk a relieving pitcher, because I mean, not all of that can speak for how a player can play. But when it comes to batting average, OPS, all that stuff, it was all provided, and we had very accurate stat keepers to give me some more content to talk about.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great. We'll go over to some Wisconsin stuff here too. We'll talk a little bit about this press times, doing the photography stuff, going through, and now, doing more stuff in sports media per se, and then also writing articles. How have you enjoyed that, and how does that, compare to doing the announcing and preparing for that?
I've enjoyed it a lot. I mean, it's not exactly what I would want to do first ultimately in the sports media, but you got to expand your horizons and get experience in anything you can, because at the end of the day, a degree is only going to get you so far. The more skills one will have on a resume, the more one will advance in the sports media field. So my work with the Press Times, a little bit of photography, but my main objective with them is to write sports articles, and not necessarily sports articles per se. Right now, before this interview, I was working on one regarding to the Bell and Health Run in Green Bay next week. Game summaries, all this, the sports writing side of it, I feel like is pretty important as well. If you pay attention to the game and have stats, and I get to be on the sidelines or walk anywhere I want on the field before the game, reach out to coaches and interview them after to get quotes. Pretty standard. There's a certain style of writing format that I try to follow. Maybe for a game, like highlight the main quarter of action in an article and kind of be very descriptive on how that went. So it is a little bit different than what I'm used to, but hey, I got to gain the experience, and this is an internship where I'll get paid credits for school and just more experience in the sports world and VIP access to high school football games in the area.
Amazing. Yeah, I did see your post on that. It was like, oh, look at you at a D1 high school game, right, chilling right up in the front and on the field and getting all the access. I had one main big question left, and it revolves around, what kind of advice would you give yourself? Maybe not fourth grade Johnny Tim, but maybe the Johnny Tim who's just started college, was looking for experience. What kind of advice would you give yourself over this time already?
Man, I would have told myself to prepare more for my first few broadcasts. Flashback to Stevens Point versus St. Norbert women's basketball, November my freshman year. I'd have told them, "You sound like a fool," but I don't know. Definitely keep staying involved. Do well in school. Work hard in everything. People will notice eventually. Just slowly build your resume. And like I said, it's a lot about what you know in the classroom, but the experience is what is going to win companies over. And I feel like that's why I had a lot of success in finding a quality team to land myself in the summer, or intern with the Press Times this semester, or even the opportunity I got with the Packers for a little bit, with the referral I got from our director of communications, Mike Counter. So freshman year, Johnny, I would have told, work harder, prepare more, prioritize school, and get your feet wet with as many experiences as you can.
All right, that's amazing, Johnny. And I want to ask you too, with that advice, if you could work for one team right now, you choose the team. You're the play-by-play guy. What team would it be?
And this is hard to think about. Ooh, I'll do the Milwaukee Brewers. I told my dad when I started getting into announcing and stuff, I was like, you know what? One day I want to be Bob Uecker's replacement, or when he steps down, I want to be the guy to fill his shoes. And although that may take some time, given there's a pretty big age gap between the average professional sports broadcaster and just a college student at the moment, but maybe that day will come, hopefully. But I'm gonna work my way to it and pounce on an opportunity when it's time. Even if it is the Chicago Cubs or the Chicago Bears, I would take it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's amazing, Johnny. Right? You got to pounce, like you said. You got to pounce on it, and if it's maybe not, like if it's a rival team, like you mentioned, you go there, and then you can transition over. The Brewers had a guy, Matt Pauley. I don't know if you remember him. He did radio stuff for doing Brewers stuff on actually Milwaukee's radio. So but a big area. He was a huge Cardinals fan. A Cardinals position opened up in radio. Went right away, went down there, and now he's working with the team he loves. So, hoping for, a story very similar to that. And, yeah, keep doing your thing. Although Michigan, go Muskegon Clippers, right, on the Wisconsin Sports Spotlight. But, John, you have anything else here to chat about?
Nothing much. Just getting ready to wrap the night up, and hopefully we got a good Brewer baseball wildcard series coming up this week.
Indeed, we do. And again, I wish you the best of luck here as you continue your collegiate career and as you continue gaining that experience. And yeah, go Muskegon. Keep posting about that. I love that stuff. So that's all I got. And again, I want to shout out Point Brewery. So Wisconsin's brewery, right? Alongside Wisconsin Sports Spotlight, just their links down below. Check out all the great stuff there in Stevens Point, and they're all in stores in Wisconsin as well. But otherwise, that's going to wrap it up here for Johnny and myself, Drew Skyberg, here on this Sunday night. Thank you all for listening to yet another episode of Drew Sports Crew, the Wisconsin Sports Spotlight, the perfect podcast for you.